things that we're doing now that take a couple weeks would have taken years back in the day.
What problem did you see that felt urgent enough to build a company around this?
They need skilled laborers, welders, grinders, painters, fabricators, and those jobs are just not ones that are being filled. Specifically shipbuilding, there's a backlog of revenue that could be realized if there was a new technology that could help solve the problem of more throughput, more welders, more grinders. We're not trying to build a faster robot that can do kung fu kicks and backflips.
What does it take to move from impressive humanoid demos to something that can survive real industrial works?
This is where rubber meets the road. You've got to work with customers early and try not to oversell what your technology can do right now. Welder's only spending 10% of his day welding. The rest of his day is being spent set up, inspecting things, preparation, moving humans away from that pointy end of the spear, upskilling humans to then be robot operators, running fleets of robots that could maybe do these tasks. That's what I am hoping to see in the future.
Jide, coffee, tea, or something else? What fuels your mornings?
Always coffee, and I am a unashamed coffee snob. So I do a pour over every morning manually. I run a Hario V60, and that's part of my process. So definitely coffee.
Awesome, love that. When you get coffee out, where's your go-to?
Oof. Man, it's rarely, honestly.
Really?
Yeah, it's rare. I'll do whatever's convenient, but man, if I don't have my,
but you'd be mad
if I don't have my freshly roasted beans from Guatemala or Ethiopia, I'm not set up well. So
that's funny. Okay, cool. When you were a kid, what did you think you'd grow up to be?
Man, both of my parents are engineers, so I kind of had an inkling that maybe engineering was on the docket. But having played sports for a while, like wanting to be a soccer player, basketball player was kind of where I was, trending toward. But getting into high school, definitely engineering became a highlight for me. Just science and mathematics became a huge interest.
Yeah. What's one technology that you can't live without?
One technology I can't live without. Oh man. I think the smartphone is the greatest invention that's happened in the last decade. As a millennial, I'm probably like super biased on that, but I can't live without my phone. But in this new paradigm with what AI tools are being able to generate, I found a nice comfort in being able to use some of these tools now to just efficiently get through a lot of work. It's been amazing right now. So Claude Code, Copilot, all these different interfaces have just completely changed the way I've been doing stuff lately. So
yeah,
that's
powerful.
A close thing.
Very powerful. If you could fast forward 10 years and see one impact that your work has made on the world, what would you want that to be?
It better be commercial robots, man. That's what I've been spending my career doing. So we better have robots in all these industries helping us in different form factors as well, right? So and doing things autonomously or semi-autonomously. So that is what I hope to have. Taking humans from doing some of these back-breaking, dangerous tasks and up-leveling us into other areas.
Awesome. Welcome to Machine Minds, everyone. I'm your host, Greg Terrusian, founder of Samson Rose, your robotics talent search partner. And on today's episode, I'm joined by Jide Akinyode, co-founder and COO at Persona AI. Thanks for being on the show today, Jide.
Pleasure.
Let's jump into it. So I want to set the stage for the audience and listeners. And if you can share, obviously you touched a bit on that. You've been focused your whole career really in the robotics space, but what was your path into robotics, and then what eventually pulled you into building Persona AI and being a co-founder?
Yeah, I started my career at NASA Johnson Space Center. I started as a 19-year-old during school, and got lucky to be in a program that was focused on advanced dexterity for manipulation. We were building a robotic astronaut. Through my 10 years spent at NASA Johnson Space Center, I was able to develop many different forms of humanoid, whether it's upper body, biped, and then other forms of robots as well, like just mobile bases, mobile manipulators. We built robots that look like, spiders and snakes and all sorts of things. So, definitely got a good understanding of how to build robotics, how to develop them. And at that time, the supply chains and the tools that are available now weren't. So we kind of had to build everything from scratch. That was what seeded me into robotics heavily. And then, once you build enough prototypes and enough proof of concepts, you then want to test yourself in the real world, right? Like, how good am I? How good of a product can I make? And can somebody actually use it? And so that led me to start looking at commercial applications for robots. So, leaving there, I then worked at a company called Nauticus Robotics, which was doing subsea seabed manipulation, right? It was basically a humanoid underwater doing work for us, right? Whether that's defense or commercial applications, for oil and gas, telecommunications, things in the ocean. And then humanoids became a thing, right? So this new paradigm with AI and embodied AI being more achievable from many different facets pulled me back into, okay, I was here at some of the early stages of humanoids. I need to get back in the game to really push this through. I couldn't sit on the sidelines.
Yeah, I love that. Was there a specific moment where you thought humanoids are finally becoming commercially real and ready for you guys to, scale that?
I'll admit, in 2024, after I'd left Nauticus, I was very skeptical about humanoids in general, just having, my previous experience with them. And I went on a fact-finding mission, just trying to understand, well, what's changed now? What's different? And I got a lot of, I had the opportunity to work with a lot of great groups, some other companies, some friends who've been in the robotic space, co-conspirators, if you will. And I had a rude awakening. Like, it's one thing to build a robot. You can buy components that you couldn't buy before. You can put them together. You can buy there's a supply chain now for just about every kind of actuator, gearbox, motor you want, camera systems, right? And then putting that together with, reinforcement learning, behavior mimicry, and all these simulation tools, it just became easier to get robots to do what you wanted them to do, right? And then now you have agentic AI who's programming these robots primarily. Like, the things that we're doing now that take a couple weeks would have taken me years back in the day. So, like, okay, stuff has changed fundamentally.
Yeah.
And I didn't really understand that coming into 2024. And so getting that experience, that kind of changed my mind on being skeptical about, whether this is the right time. So.
Interesting. What lessons from your earlier career shaped how you think about building robotics companies today? Because you've obviously seen it from, like, I think NASA JPL is a very different lens, more government funding or slower work, off-world stuff, etc. And then going into underwater commercial, because Nauticus went, public, etc. So you've seen very different lenses.
Yep. Yeah. It's one thing to build the technology and another thing to actually deploy it, maintain it, service it, get it adopted, right? So, I think one of the biggest things I learned after sitting on a boat for, weeks, months on end, trying to deploy technology in the ocean, right? It's one thing to build something cool that's got, a lot of amazing features that somebody wants. It's another thing to get it reliable enough to maintain it, to service it, and then build a business case around how you offer that to someone so they can adopt it, right? We in robotics, we have a problem with scaling and adoption, right? We're very good at getting initial proof of concepts going, but then how do you get it into someone else's workflows where they can now adopt it fully, right? Drones have been around for a long time, aerial drones, but we're still trying to figure out the right workflows to get those scaled at the rate that they should be. So I think what I've learned across the years is not to overlook the work that goes into operations, deployment, maintenance, that cycle that then removes the barrier for a customer to adopt.
Let's talk about Persona AI now. This is your new baby, where you're focused all your time. And you guys are focused on heavy industries, right? What problem did you see that felt urgent enough to build a company around this?
Yeah, heavy industries is, in the US, we are, I think we maybe lost sight of what heavy industries really mean. A lot of our traction has been in Asia, where that is a core part of their economy, right? Building large structures, planes, trains, automobiles, ships, right? That sort of development, construction equipment, that sort of development is core for getting stuff done. And when you look at those industries, the input processes that those companies who are building these things need are skilled trades. They need skilled laborers, welders, grinders, painters, fabricators, and those jobs are just not ones that are being filled, right? And so when we were looking at how do we approach the market, wanting to find a set of use cases that had a defined need, not only from a labor shortage, but then how could you help these companies realize more revenue, drive more profit, right? It's one thing to be on the cost reduction side of things, right? And some industries are looking at that, but in the areas that we're working in is like specifically shipbuilding. There's a backlog of revenue that could be realized if there was a new technology that could help solve the problem of more throughput, more welders, more grinders, more people on the ground to do these things. So, Persona is really, really focused on how do we bring, the humanoid robot as a alternative labor solution.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think what you're saying also outlines why you started with industrial environments instead of like the homes and offices and retail warehouses, where we're seeing, I think it's more buzz, hype, like how to do that, right? And I was having a conversation recently about where the real value unlock is and barrier to entry is. And it makes sense that, the industrial environments are the ideal place to start or actually deploy.
Yeah, look, the home may be the home is probably the end game market, right? So like you can imagine extrapolate everyone having one or two robots in their home. Cool. But is that going to be tomorrow? Like, can I build a business off that in the next 2 to 3 years? So yeah, it's just a different approach, but I think we need people. This is a huge space, so we need people thinking about all these different challenges, and heavy industries is just one of the many.
Yeah. When customers, actually, you know what, I'm curious, when customers and investors, and then also maybe even people that you're hiring, we talked offline, you guys had a big hiring push and stuff like that. When these three groups first see what Persona AI is building, what tends to click for them the fastest?
From the customer perspective, I think they feel heard, right? Like a lot of these robotics companies right now, they don't see how someone is thinking singularly about their niche use cases. So it's one thing to think about the home, but can those robots then go into a shipyard and work basically outside in harsh environments? Probably not. So customers who are in these hem industry spaces resonate with what we're building. They see that we're not trying to build a fast robot that can do kung fu kicks and backflips and whatnot, right? So they resonate with that. I think investors see an opportunity to be working with a company who's kind of defining a category. And so we can define that category, right? If this is, this is akin to like the automobile industry, right? And the Model T had just come out. And now all these upstart, robotics or automobile manufacturers are cropping up, and we're all building different, forms of cars. Well, I mean, there's room for a truck, there's room for a van, there's room for a sedan, there's room for a sports car, right? We have all these things. They do all the same thing, get you from point A to point B. But somebody had to be thinking about, how am I developing for that particular end use case in that particular market? So there's space for everyone here. So I think investors see that as an opportunity.
I hadn't thought about that analogy. That's a great analogy. Yeah, in all honesty. A lot of people still ask, why does a robot need to look like a human, though? Where does the humanoid form factor actually become useful in these industries or in these spaces?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. Right. I think there's wanting to model human kinematics and anthropomorphism, because the world is designed for humans, right? From the height of your door handle to the height of a chair to the way, all of our spaces and all of our manufacturing workflows are designed for humans. So that is a thing. But then there's the other side of this, is where, like, okay, well, some people are approaching what we call the uncanny valley, where we're trying to make robots look exactly like humans. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is get our hands. Our hands are the things that allow us to do amazing things. Our level of dexterity and the ability to infer information from multiple senses that we use is unparalleled. So really, it starts with, okay, can you get hands in the place that you want, or end effector in the place that you want to do work? But not every end solution or use case needs bipedal locomotion, right? Maybe you can put wheels on it. Like if I'm in a factory floor and it's flat and I can move around, I'm in a logistics warehouse, maybe I just have a wheeled robot, right? But the areas that I'm looking at are ones where humans are unique, because you can move into a very cluttered space. And, I wear a size 12 shoe. So a 12 by 12 inch square, I'm standing there and I can put 200 pounds on my back. Well, that's the same kind of promise that you would want from a humanoid, which is, I can get in that small space. I can change my workspace from being down at the ground to maybe above my head to around me. And that gives you ultimate flexibility, right? Yeah. And so when you start breaking it down from that perspective, you start saying, okay, well, certainly I'm not getting a wheeled robot in a shipyard. I wish I had visuals for you, but like, it is way too tight, way too cluttered. There's steel pieces everywhere. There's structures. You're stepping into parts of the ship. You're climbing up on parts of the ship. You're dangling from the side of the vessel.
I've seen some of these your videos and pictures and stuff like that. Yeah.
So I think it comes down to the environment, right? So like, just to answer your question, like the environment probably drives what your locomoting method is. And for us, I think 2 legs and 2 arms and hands is what we're trying to offer.
Yeah, that makes sense. What is still much harder than people outside of robotics realize when it comes to building a product like this, or even deploying it consistently and successfully?
I mean, we're all betting on the come, right? So there's this idea that these robot foundation models and world models can be extrapolated to kind of any embodiment and solve these, customer problems, meet cycle times, meet the reliability and the repeatability expectations that customers have. Like there's that expectation that will happen. There's a lot of groups working on it, right? From the big players like the Googles and the physical intelligence of the world and the, open AIs and the like. But we're all still waiting to see whether or not that actually scales and tracks. Is there a limitation to what a foundation model, a world model can provide for a certain embodiment? So that is a big portion of this. But I think the other sides of this, like from a social and a perspective, like people are ready for robots. Like, people are ready for robots. I don't think we're having this fight with unions. Yeah, they're worried about people taking other people's jobs, but I think they see this as, like, if we want to have a viable industry, we need to be willing to adopt these new technologies. So socially, I think we're prepared. But technology, there's still a lot of tech that needs to be developed for these things to really scale.
I'm curious about the whole union thing, right? Because I hear that's always something that comes up. There's like resistance to robots taking people's jobs and all of that stuff. But when you actually talk to the owners and operators of a lot of these facilities or industries, and they're like, we're so understaffed, we don't have enough people here. Like you said, we've got this backlog of revenue to realize. It's taking way too long to build these things, or anything from like a logistics facility to a manufacturing facility, the same. Where does that come to a head? If the unions are saying one thing and then the owners, operators, and like the industry saying another, like how do we get around that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I guess I'll step back. Like when I started we were at NASA, we would have industry partners, right? So we would go try to solve a problem, and we would work with someone in industry who also wanted to solve similar problem. So when we were building Robonaut 2, we worked with General Motors, right? And we had a good partnership with General Motors, and they wanted to see if they could use a highly dexterous upper body humanoid to install, flexible materials that were difficult to automate with traditional robotics. Okay. But at that time, this was like, early 2010s, we couldn't really talk about it because GM was going through a bunch of nonsense they were going through financially, right? And the power of the unions was very strong that we couldn't talk about it. We were designing it behind closed doors. We had to sign NDAs not to talk about it publicly. But now you fast forward to now, in the last couple of years, I've spoken to a lot of automotive manufacturers, and that concern is completely gone. Right? They realize that if we're going to compete in, I'll just talk about U.S. manufacturers. If we're going to compete with Chinese manufacturers, we need to do something different. And they realize that, this like lights out manufacturing perspective needs to be something, reduced cost needs to be something that they take seriously. So they're changing their minds around it. But more broadly, I think this goes back to one of your earlier questions, is like, how do you build out, adoption in a certain company or a certain industry? You have to still sell into like multiple levels, right? So like I need to go to like the plant manager and show him why he would want to adopt, my robot, right? Because he has different needs than the CEO who's maybe looking at a visionary statement, or maybe like the technology champion in the company who has a different charge, right? So a lot of times we miss that the end users or the real decision makers are the boots on the ground that maybe you don't really get to talk to, and you miss that touch point. And maybe the unlock or the reason why they would want to use it may not be the same reason why the CEO of the company you spoke to, or the head of product of the company you spoke to, or the technology champion originally told you. So multiple levels is interesting.
Yeah, fair. What does it take to move from impressive humanoid demos, which obviously there's a lot of buzz and hype with the videos and all of that stuff that a lot of other companies are doing, to something that can, survive real industrial work? So I think you guys lean more to the deployment and real work side than fancy video side.
Oh man. This is where the rubber meets the road. Like you've got to work with customers early. And because this new technology is not something that even your customers understand, there's a learning curve for this, right? And our approach is to get in early and work on proof of concept to help illustrate what should we be doing, help them get ready to onboard these things, knowing that it's going to take, a year, maybe 2 years to adopt into whatever workflows they have. But with that comes transparency and really trying not to oversell what you're your technology can do right now, and really trying to understand and learn from them on what their pain points are. So you're trying to solve the right problem. And so, but it's not. I mean, demos are necessary. We have to be able to illustrate what could be possible, right? That's always going to be necessary. I'm always going to have to do that. But when you get into these customer POCs, the name of the game there is just making sure that you don't have mismatched expectations, and that over time you're doing what you say you're going to be doing, and then you get them bought in too, right? Like, I've been in a lot of scenarios where you work with a company and it's, like a free option for them, right? Like, oh, I'll just try this out, but they have no intent to scale. So how do you get past that, right? You have to put some things in place to actually drive adoption and momentum on their end as well as on your end. And the key is to really make sure those are pointing in the same direction, and that they're moving as quickly as you are, and you're able to validate that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Persona AI has talked about roles like welding, inspection, and building across all these industries. How do you decide which tasks are the right first deployments?
Yeah. So my the CEO and co-founder Nick Radford is doing a PhD he's doing his PhD in business, and he's focused it around coming up with a metric for humanoid deployment based on use cases. So he's got a whole rubric that he's developed to help us grade these tasks. But
interesting.
Yeah, it's focused around what is the total number of like units one can actually deploy, right? There's a component of density, right? So like you can think about, I talked about operational challenges, but if there's a task that could be done with 100 robots in a single location, your operational overhead is now lower, right? What is the cost that you would spend fully wrapped on doing that service, doing that task right now? Does that make sense, right? Pick and place in a fulfillment warehouse, sorting bags has one price point, but a welder fully wrapped with training and all their benefits has a whole nother price point, right? So what is that opportunity there? And then is this a good client for adoption, right? Like how do we know that working with this customer is actually going to bear fruit? Can they actually adopt technology well? Or do they have a track record of doing that? So we have all these different metrics that we use to kind of grade how we approach different customers and clients.
Makes sense. How much of the challenge is hardware and how much is like autonomy and integrating into the customer's workflow?
I mean, from the product side, it's everything, right? Like, you're vertically integrated. So you've got hardware, you've got, your own platform software, then you've got your own application level software, you've got, fleet management. What are you doing there? How reliable is all of those things combined? And then you start working into integration with the customer. Well, what is their workflow? How do they manage their systems? Do you need to onboard another way for them to take their current process for workflow management into your system, right? And that's a challenging portion of this. But I mean, I think a lot of this just comes down to like we're all, and I think in robotics, especially in humanoids, we're all trading certain aspects. You just can't. There's no free lunch, right? So one use case might require more battery runtime, but you want to put a bigger battery on there, you get penalized because you have to make a heavier robot because you need a bigger actuator. Like it just compounds these things. So we're all trading certain aspects. And then the winners, I think, are the ones who execute very well at the edges where they produce 5 to 10% that enables the cycle time, that use case, or that better reliability or a better understanding of manufacturing so that the way you put this thing together and maintain it, sustain it is not eating your lunch. So it's really, I think it's a lot of it is an execution game. And you're really like, what game am I playing? How do I execute on my vertical stack very, very efficiently without having to have a bunch of churn and rework?
Yeah, that's fair. What does a successful first deployment actually look like for you guys? Because I can imagine some of this you've mentioned, it all depends on the customer. I'm sure there's some sort of partnership and development process you guys go through as well. But once you actually get to that deployment stage, what does success look like?
What does success look like? I mean, look, if we're able to deploy, you know, let's just call it 50 robots in HD's facility, right? I will be jumping up and down like fist pumping, because that'll be one of the most successful deployments to date, right? So I think right now everyone's in the tens of robots, maybe in some capacity. But for me, it's really, can we demonstrate a basic input process for us, which is, can you lay down welds in small and medium block assembly, right? And that welding is achievable. So can I get a robot to lay down a linear weld at a certain rate, looking at, a generalized set of parts, and do that at some appreciable clip? If we can do that, that'll be very, very good. That'll be very, very good. Because then we can take that, we can apply it to different things, and we can apply it to different customer use cases. So I don't have a total number of robots I need to deploy, but it's really just, if we're able to prove that our robot is rugged and capable enough to survive in those areas and then do the task, that's what I need.
I guess that's the first steps, right, in the startup world, getting to that point, and then rinse and repeat, really. Yeah.
We'll see. I think. Go ahead.
No, carry on. Finish your thought, because I was going to switch gears. Yeah.
Yeah. No. I was just going to follow up with, the customer. I think right now is everyone's enamored with what their strategy is on this, and the proof, it just needs to be shown to them to start. And then from there, there's going to be a whole host of other issues and challenges that we'll get into. But I think it's really how quickly can you deploy? Once you deploy, how reliable is your system? Do that one thing immediately extremely well, and then start worrying about the edge cases from there.
Yeah. Makes sense. So I want to talk a bit about talent and building the team. Obviously, it's what I do day to day, and we were talking a bit about this and how much you guys have grown as well, especially just this year. What kinds of talent do you need around the table early, when you're building humanoids for heavy industries?
Man, we've hired across the board, man. Wow, I've got a whole hardware team, from electricals to mechanical designers to embedded firmware developers, to people who focus in actuation, people who focus in structures, other people who focus in mechanism design. And then, bridging to the software side of things, you've got down and in robotic software developers who are dealing with the pipes and pumps of data, moving things back and forth, middleware, moving up a higher level in the stack to, controls for maybe manipulation, locomotion, to grasping, to perception, keep going up higher, autonomy. And then you're talking about data collection. Okay, you want to build or fine tune a policy or some model, then you need ML talent, right? And you need varying degrees of expertise. I'm hiring, PhDs with 10 to 15 years experience, and I've got, engineers coming straight out of school. So it's a wide breadth, and not only that, but then manufacturing, right? You've got to have people who want to build the thing, and who are going to, technicians who are going to put it together. You need people who are going to help with supply chain. You need people who are going to manage the process workflows for manufacturing, to then the operations. I need people to run and deploy the robot, to test it, to maintain it. We're hiring on all facets. So it's a real challenge right now.
Yeah, I think the general public, or even people that just maybe have come from just the software world and now dabbling in robotics and hardware, underestimate the breadth of talent you need, and just, breaking down all of those parts, especially for a humanoid, which is such a complex robot, right? So many different areas, even in just the software and control side, that's huge, from the manipulation, locomotion, and in general, they're so specialist.
Yeah, and it's cutthroat out here right now. Like,
Yeah.
not only are we all trying to find the same people, but there's
Yeah.
limited resources and there's limited talent who have the experience that you need in this area, right? Some, like the ML talent on some of these model development and training, they might just be in research. So you're like clamoring for a small handful of people who've been exposed to these in university labs or maybe other companies. And then you are dealing with that the amount of money and capital that's been put into this space. You know, people are writing their own checks. They're asking for whatever they want. So it's a real challenge to be able to pull in this talent.
It's pretty crazy. It's so competitive. And then now there's all the big players also involved, as well as all the startups that everyone has a different angle, right? And then you've been in the tech space long enough to know, the one way that you just throw money at the problem or it doesn't ever end well in the long run, but it just like muddies the water. So but yeah, it's crazy. But, like you mentioned, there's a lot happening in research, which is really cool. I think you just have to have, I've touched on this a few times on the show, but internally you have to have like the right leader and also right awareness to know how to move people effectively from research or from academia into commercial, because there's sometimes that disconnect, right? And either you're not aware of the talent and you don't know how to utilize them, or you just think like, oh, is an engineer is an engineer is an engineer, and you put them in and then they fail. So
yeah. I think there's your core team that you need enough people who understand what you're building, how to build it, to then influence and set the culture, right? I think the culture is a big thing. And then you have to be scrappy after that, right? You're not always going to have like the perfect puzzle piece to get into your company, but there are a lot of diamonds in the rough, man. Like, I mean, we're located in Houston. I don't think most people would say that, oh, robotics AI talent is like Houston is a hotbed for that.
yeah.
But when you start looking at it with universities around here that we have and other institutes and other research areas in Austin and San Antonio and in Dallas and in and around here, like there's talent to be had. There's a lot of talent to be repurposed if you can find them. So you got to be a little bit creative and open-minded to like bringing in other perspectives that maybe aren't just like, oh, well, you've worked at, one of the FANGs or you've worked at one of these core institutes. So.
Right. Yeah, that's true. It's also, I think, becoming more of an appealing place to relocate people to as well, right? Like you're either going to go salary wise to the crazy end, which probably isn't sustainable, and then you have to be in a particular place and like one of many, whatever. Or what I've kind of found is in the startup world, like salaries are kind of normalized to a certain extent, and then it's like value proposition, the role, the impact, the involvement, equity, the stage, etc. So when you're there and when you're at a certain point in your career, if you're saying, hey, I need someone with 15 years experience and a PhD, they're probably at a very different place in life than someone else who's like fresh out of grad school and doesn't mind living in San Francisco or LA or New York, right?
Yeah.
And it means less for them than it would if they're getting that same salary in somewhere like a Houston.
Yep. Yep. No, I run into that a lot, man. It's funny. A lot of the people that we have who we've moved either have a connection to Texas or have a connection for one of the locations that we're in. And
really?
Yeah, I find that there's like a common thread here. Like, oh, I've got, my grandma lives here or something, or like, I used to live here, 10 years ago or something, and I enjoyed it. So there's some common thread to bring people here, and we've leveraged that for sure. But then like when people get here, and there's a common misconception about Houston and Texas, like Houston is not, it does not fit any of the general stereotypes that most cities in Texas might portray. So yeah, it's an interesting surprise for most people when we bring them here and they tour around the place. They're like, oh, this is different from what I expected. So
what's their preconceived ideas of Houston or Texas in general, I
Oh,
guess.
oh
Yeah.
man, we're all cowboys out here running
Cowboys, yeah.
around, you know, with our guns on our holsters and you know, wearing cowboy hats and taking the horse into work. I mean, but the reality is that like Houston is one of the most multicultural, multilinguistic cities, right? And I always tell everyone that like you're not going to find better culinary food scene here. I'll put Houston's food
Really?
against everybody's food. I don't care. You
Really?
bring it. I don't care. You name the
Wow.
genre. I will take you to a place in Houston that has food on par, if not better. Right. So we eat well. We eat really,
Yeah.
really well here.
I had no
And
idea. Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah, it's a real thing, man. And then every culture, and my company is multicultural, right? So like, you know, every culture is represented here. You have your area of town where you can go get whatever you need and be around your people if you need to. So
Yeah.
that's a big draw here too.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. I think, you know, with the stereotype of like what people assume Texas is like, that's probably so surprising. I'm going to have to take you up on that and come to Texas and try out some of this food.
All right.
Back to the talent side, though, for obviously you've got such a wide breadth of different areas you need to hire in. And right now it's like this war for talent in certain ones. What roles or skill sets do you think are the hardest to find right now? Is it that
Man,
ML side?
ML
Yeah.
scientists, ML researchers, um, anything with moving into autonomy and from the agentic side, I think is still difficult. And yeah, I will even say just general like, you know, manipulation, people, grasping people are insanely hard to find.
Yeah. I second that. We've been engaged in some really tough searches there as well. But yeah, it's cool. It's a very cool space. What do you think separates someone who is brilliant technically, but you know that can actually help build a robotics company?
What do you mean? You're asking whether or not like what am I looking for in
From the
someone who
two,
can?
yeah, from the two sides, like what makes someone brilliant technically and separates them from someone who can actually build a robotics company? Because I think they can be two separate things, right? You've got
I
certain
see.
people are like, you know, we don't want amazing arseholes, for example, right? That's just destructive and distracting. And then other people are like, oh, this person's technically amazing, but they're just so focused on research and R&D, like nothing's actually going to come out here to build this company or build this product.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, you hit it on the head right there. Like one of my, I steal this from Patty McCord at Netflix. I think she says no bozos, no assholes. So I try to make sure we don't have any of those. But then there's a mindset, right? Like there's people who want to do research and there's a place for those people, but I'm looking at people who want to build product, right? And that's a different skill. And product tends to, yeah, you get into the details and the weeds of things, but you're also not trying to force fit tech in a place where it doesn't need to be. You're not just doing the research because you think it's interesting and you want to try to find a home for it. You're really looking at customer first requirements that driving your product requirement, driving your system requirements, and then letting the technology be a solution for those requirements. So it's a different paradigm shift.
That's fair. How do you guys keep the team aligned when the work is technically difficult? And the timelines, obviously, within shipbuilding and even robotics in general can be long, but then the customer expectations are super high.
A lot of communication.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, our leadership style is purely just to be very open and direct, give everyone context, to treat everyone like adults. Like, you know, you guys understand what we're trying to do, what we're trying to get accomplished. It needs to be done on time. I'm not going to be like running everyone. I mean, we're a startup, so we're going to be running heavy, but we need to put plans in place, right? You know, planning is invaluable. So put plans in place. You do what you say you're going to do. You get it done. If things aren't going well, run it up the chain. Like, it's not a rocket. There's no secret sauce here, but I think the only difference for us is that we're probably over, we share a lot, and we expect everyone to be able to handle how much we're sharing. And from that we gain horsepower, because people are starting to think and align themselves like we as the founders, and they become more entrepreneurial, and now they're thinking a different light.
I love that. Yeah, I think when you've worked in places where communication isn't fluid and things are kept away from or behind the scenes, from the general population, when you're a startup, everyone feels like, we're part of this from the ground up. So, but if the communication doesn't reflect that, it can be detrimental. But like what you said, I hadn't heard of it, but that's like compounding. You share it. Now everyone's thinking like a founder. Everyone's thinking like part of the business and the team properly. Yeah. As COO, how do you think about building the operating system of the company while the product itself is, still evolving and growing?
Yeah, I'll be honest. That's probably the most challenging thing to change my mind around. Like, my product is not necessarily the robot that we're building. My product is the company, the team, how this place runs, how we become efficient. And so we have so many resources to deploy. So I need to make sure that we're efficiently using those resources to get this company, where it needs to be on the time it needs to be. But it is a different, like, the way I affect change is not by, doing anything technical. I'm a technical guy by nature, but in my background, but it may be from like the people management relationship side of things, right? Do I have the right people in the right spots? Do we? What is the right time to bring on process and policy to do things? When do we need to automate areas so that are just becoming inefficient? When do we need to hire more people to take over areas and grow the team, right? There's a skill to like becoming too top heavy, or maybe growing too wide. You just gotta, what I find is I do a little bit of testing, I deploy something, and then I digest it. So as I hire, like, I try not to hire too fast, because you might not be able to digest all the resources you've brought in. Yeah. And then after you've digested it, you might say, oh, well, I'd rather go in a different direction, right? But you've spent 5-6 months building out a 10-person team that you then decided 2 months after that.
Yeah, that's experience. I'm curious, what have you learned from conversations with shipyards and energy companies or any of these industrial operators? Something that surprised you?
Wow. Oh man, that's a lot. Okay, so in a shipyard, right? I assume that welders are just, all they're doing is welding. Like, they've got the arc on, they're just welding all the time. Well, in reality, a welder is only spending 10% of his day welding.
Really?
Like, actually turning the arc welder on. The rest of his day is being spent doing all this setup and manipulating other objects, setup tools, moving equipment around, just inspecting things, just preparation. And then 10% of his day is with the actual weld arm. It's just like,
wow,
that
is really surprising. That's crazy. So why? Like, is it like a limitation of how long they can actually weld for as well? Or is it just so much busy work around it to get them set up to do the job?
Part of it, it is, the position that these guys need to be in to constantly lay down a weld is compromising, man. I can barely squat down for, a couple minutes before my knees start hurting. So that is one challenge. But it's also workflow. It's also like how they deployed and done things previously. I'll add to that, like, you would think that, robotic arms have been around for a while, and the way that we deploy those in manufacturing settings has been pretty well understood. But when you get into these shipbuilding areas where you can't really have like an assembly line workflow because the structures are so large or so big, right? So it changes the paradigm shift. And so you would say, somebody might say, oh, well, you just build a new factory and completely change your workflow. But the cost of doing that really doesn't bear out for many businesses, right? Like they're trading whether or not it's CapEx or OpEx that they want to run their business on. And the margins are very thin. So you're kind of baked into what you're doing, adding a little bit of technology here and there. And so what ends up happening is you might have a robotic arm project that could do a little bit of the task, but doesn't quite do all of it. And so it only gets you part of the way there. And so I see a lot of these like disparate things in these shipyards where they've deployed, cobots in certain areas. They've deployed maybe just like automated seam trackers, or they've deployed big gantry systems that come down with like 10 arms on them and all do welding at the same time. But that's only one part of the puzzle, right? So I guess I really had to understand that they're trying to solve these things from many different facets. And at the end of the day, like they just need something that is more flexible to do a multitude of tasks. Maybe not every task, but something that is more flexible so they can move their workforce from, all right, well, we're all going to do fit up today. And the next day, we're all going to do welding. Maybe the next day, we're all going to do grinding. It's that flexibility that they don't have. And when you build these kind of bespoke systems, you lose that opportunity.
That's awesome. Well, look, I'm conscious of time, so let me see if I can squeeze in one or two more before, because I know you're a busy man. What tasks, in your opinion, should humans absolutely not be doing 10 years from now?
Man. Oof. Oh, man. I mean, anything that to do it causes direct hazard on your health, we need to be moving humans away from that, right? Like jobs like mining. I mean, I don't know if you've been on an offshore rig and been a roughneck who's like trying to repair, the side of a floating rig. Like some of this stuff.
I watched Landman, so that's as close as I've got
to. And you can tell that stuff is dangerous too.
That, yeah.
So yeah, we just. What I'd like to see is moving humans away from that pointy end of the spear for doing those dangerous tasks, while upskilling humans to then be robot operators, controllers, right? Running fleets of robots that can maybe do these tasks. That's what I am hoping to see in the near future, where you're no longer putting your future, your life, your health at stake to be the person performing that task. But you have a lot of expertise in welding, in being a roughneck, but you can now direct robots to do those things. And you're now much more effective and useful.
Well, finally, what advice would you give to someone who wants to build robotics that actually changes the physical world?
Go talk to customers, go listen, ask questions, listen again, ask questions, strip yourself of your preconceived notions and how you think things need to be done, and let the customers drive you to a certain extent, and just buckle up and
get your head down.
Put your head down, because this is not easy. This is probably one of the hardest things we could be going after right now.
I think that's a nice slice of reality pie there as well for people. It's not the shiny fun thing to go after. It's real work. It's hard, and especially in these industries, there's a reason it hasn't been done.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, look, thank you so much for being on the show, Jide. This was great. It was great learning more about you guys and you and the team and everything like that. So I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Thank you.
My pleasure. How can our listeners learn more about you, Persona AI, follow along? I know you guys are hiring a bunch as well and have some exciting things coming up.
Yeah, we are really active on LinkedIn. We've got every social media platform. We're beginning to engage a little bit more. So feel free to drop me a line there. And yeah, we are hiring on all roles. Yeah, we're really looking to bolster our team here. But yeah, we will in the next couple of months. There's a lot of big things coming from Persona, so the next 6 months should be very entertaining.
Amazing. All right. Well, maybe we'll have to get you or Nick back on the show after that point. Thanks again for your time.
Cool.